organizations, kind of push them to start looking at becoming digitally enabled. And this includes the way that they market to their clients, the way that they sell, the way that the changes in the way that they communicate with their clients, and the channels that we do that with. I don't think any company that's out today wouldn't have at least some presence in social media, for example. It's a very big change from, say, 5 years ago. In order for this to work right for organizations, there needs to be an alignment between services, product, operations, and the business to embrace a more customer-focused model. And as with any changes in technology and business process, you can gain great benefits from it, but it's not without increasing risk to the organization if not done right. And this is why it's important for business, security, and technology all to have the same vision in regards to digital enablement. And they really need to be sort of in lockstep with what that means for the organization. Because every company out there now is going to embrace some type of digital enablement, or they're going to fail to be successful in the future. And I think we've seen this over time. If we kind of look back to the computing revolution, in the beginning we had the mainframe, data didn't come to us, we went to visit it where it lived. Security was a much less complex problem for us to solve back then. Physical security, some access control, and our user base was smaller, and the applications that we needed to support were far less numerous than today. We fast forward a few years, and distributed computing came out, and then we had cheaper compute capability, and this allowed us to adopt technology in more ways and in more areas of the business, and things got more complex. We had to start thinking about things like network security and visibility, and then sort of the shining note on that revolution was the internet, and now we're connected to the rest of the world. A lot more to worry about, a lot more in business capability, but a lot more from a security problem to fix. And now we're really looking at this sort of third platform revolution, which is kind of wrapped up in this thing called digital transformation. And at its foundation, it's leveraging things like cloud or virtualization as the underlying pin, but it's also introducing new ways to do compute with mobile and IoT. And I don't know about you, but I think I do more work on this than my laptop these days. And it's just going to continue to create new ways for us to compute and new ways to consume data and market to our clients. So here's a little audience participation piece. How many companies that were around in the Fortune 500 in the 1950s do you think are still in business today? Anybody want to guess? No takers? How many? No, number. Give me a number. 'Anybody else want to guess? 25. A little low, a little high. So about 60 companies. So that represents about 12% of the companies that were in business starting from the first technology revolution. And this statistic came from the book Only the Paranoid by Andy Grove. And he could attribute sort of the death of those companies to either not picking the right technology or not implementing it right or just not staying up with the times. And we're seeing this with digital transformation. And there's a number of drivers for why companies are looking at digital. Our clients are becoming digital. If we look at the cell phone or the smartphone industry, we're going to have about 5.9 billion devices in the wild around 2021. And a lot of us are consuming services and content that way. Our channels are changing. If we look at social media, you've got over 1 billion subscribers on YouTube and Facebook. We sort of held the line for many years, back in the day, on letting social media into the organizations. But really, it became a point where it was needed for business. That's where you get all your training from your partners, or where your marketing plan was going for that month. And there's a number of benefits to becoming digitally enabled. It improves efficiency and flexibility within your organization. It helps to enable the business. It improves competitive ability through leveraging of technologies and streamlining processes. Improves decision making. We think of big data and data analytics and how we can enrich data these days and how we can use that to drive figuring out what our clients want, what our partners want, what the market wants, and it helps us to be quicker at bringing that to market. It also improves customer satisfaction. We get almost instant feedback these days with social media on what we may be trying to do for a company. And a good example of this is things like retail and multi-channel. I want to buy it online, I want to pick it up in the store, I want to buy it online, but maybe I have a problem with it, I want to return it to the store. I want to be able to get help in different ways. Maybe I want to speak to a person, maybe I don't want to speak to a person, maybe I want to have an online chat session. And these types of channels and the way that we are changing the way that we do business is all part of digital transformation. So why don't we talk about a use case where digital transformation has been used successfully. Does anybody know who Niantic is? No guesses? Anybody heard of Pokemon Go? So they were an internal company that was incubated by Google, founded by a guy named John Hankey, as an internal startup. They started the company in 2010, and then after landing about $3 million in venture capital, they were spun out as their own organization with a valuation of about $175 million. They started this little thing called Pokemon Go and leveraged the cloud and digital to deliver this, and very quickly grew. 50 million, then 100 million, and then they capped out at about 753 million subscribers, and now they're gravitating around 65 million, and they're valued at over $3 billion now. If we had tried to build that same solution with the second generation platform, we would have never scaled. Or if we even had the ability to build that out, think of the capital outlay that we would have done for that, and it wouldn't have been profitable. So it's an example where elasticity and agility that you get from going digital can pay off in a big way. So along with digital, most of the organizations that we're talking to are also adopting DevOps and Agile. And Agile not just from a development perspective, but also from process reengineering as they are looking at different ways of interacting with their clients, retooling processes for that. And these are not just companies in the technology space. We're seeing movement in some fairly established and static vertical markets, such as health and wellness, where they're really truly embracing digital as their next play. And with DevOps, this helps to enable them based upon some key goals that DevOps provides. So it's a shorter development life cycle, you get more dependable releases, the ability to quickly respond to business needs and client needs, and you have this process of continuous improvement, which helps quite a bit. And with speed, you get to innovate better, you get to adapt to client needs and markets. Rapid delivery increases the frequency and pace in which you can bring releases out. I think we're all seeing a shift in this where most of the companies that were white box developers are now going to a subscription-based service. You're getting those latest features every week and not having to worry about it. The continuous improvement also helps with the reliability of the product. By monitoring things in real time, we can adjust performance, we can bring more resources to bear within the digital environment. And again, provide a better experience for the customer. By combining operations and development, we get better collaboration. This also helps us shorten time to market by lessening the number of handoffs that we would normally using a traditional IT computing model. And DevOps also emphasizes values such as ownership and accountability, as well as it places a focus on automation and the adoption of continuous monitoring to help in the improvement of delivery. So what's security's role in DevOps? Because it really does change the way that we interact, or we have traditionally interacted with projects and with development and our IT friends. So really it starts with baseline, getting involved with the DevOps teams from the get-go, making certain that we're educating our development teams on secure coding. We're establishing threat modeling processes, perhaps, to ensure that we're identifying risks before we code anything. We're looking at those particular risks and the impact to the business and what we may want to consider from a control perspective. It's also important, or important exercises to create classifications for your applications. This shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all from a requirements development perspective. It allows us to kind of focus on, taking that approach allows us to focus on the crown jewels and putting the effort in where it makes the most sense for the organization, measuring it by risk. And this is also where we want to start having some conversations around identity. Creating and modifying production environments in the cloud, those accounts can be very powerful. And this is often where we've seen organizations get bit by not thinking of things like privileged access management or having a heightened visibility into changes and actions that go on within those environments. We also, identity is still one of the most targeted security controls out there, so it's important to have those conversations with the developers and really understand what level of access they need to do their job. And then one of the things that we can do to help speed up the development process is to develop reference architecture. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail in a couple slides. But it really, a couple of the basic tenets would be to start from known good, building purpose-built images with security in mind, looking at predefined control capabilities around identity, encryption, logging, and having those as reusable components as part of the development process. We also should be thinking about, much like we've done with infrastructure as code, thinking of security as code, so that it can be built into that tooling process and implemented automatically as part of the build. We should also think about automating testing, looking at scanning technologies and possibly building building scripts and other types of reusable components that we can use to test security of these releases as they quickly move through the pipeline. And then, empower your developers to use these tools, to learn them. It's a great education opportunity, as well as it helps to improve security posture over time. And we also want to trust but verify, so establishing a gate at the end where security will have to greenlight it prior to production. But it's also understanding and agreeing upon with development the SLA for when things need to be fixed. And another key element in here is not seeing security problems as security issues. They're really bugs. They should be tracked as such. And and just like any other bug within the development lifecycle should be tracked and development measured against that. So I want to talk a little bit about security reference architecture and what some of the benefits are of this. First and foremost is consistency. By establishing predefined approaches towards specific control domains, we can support the reliability aspect of DevOps by making certain that what's going in is tested. We're not reinventing the wheel each time that we're trying to bring out an application. And reusability helps us create predictable and repeatable patterns for security implementations. And that helps with the reliability aspect of DevOps. Also, by engaging in knowledge sharing, we can create best practices. We can contribute to the reliability aspect of DevOps by using known working approaches, provides guidelines for design, which reduces errors. Again, reliability aspect of DevOps. Provides a good approach for teaching security, which helps us to build a culture of security within organizations, which has really been where I have had the most luck, is when I've been able to install security into a culture. I know that my program was working well. And then it also allows us to right size. As I said earlier, there's not just one pattern of implementation that we could consider. It really should be, what we do from a control perspective should be related to the specific risk of the initiative or the application in which we're working on at that moment in time. And then once we sort of understand the classifications of the applications, we can create matrices of security controls that align with them. I worked with one company a number of years back. We did a lot of development internally. So we had about 900 applications globally. So we took them all through risk assessment one year. And we decided on a sort of a 3-tier scale for applications. And we found out that when we went through this exercise, really only a handful of those applications were truly critical. And that allowed us to focus our efforts on that. It also allowed us to identify and move forward areas of reference architecture that could be built once and leveraged many times across not only those critical applications, but where it was warranted, some of the medium or low risk apps as well over time, when it made sense, where it fit in the schedule as far as the development life cycle. So this is not a be-all, end-all listing of reference architectures. But some of the domains that we want to take in consideration when we're thinking about reference architectures. First would be identity. And arguably, I think it's probably the most important area that most companies can focus on these days, especially for organizations that are moving to a hybrid IT model. Identity may be the only thing that we can count on having complete control over, depending on the third parties that we partner with, the SaaS providers that we work with. Really looking at identity, looking at the behavior of what users are doing becomes paramount to the success of a hybrid model. The other aspect is looking at, still looking at some of the traditional controls that we leverage, but with a slightly different eye, especially in the cloud, around network security. Software-defined networks give us a great level of granularity where we can implement things by policy and have it reiterate and again, be part of that build process. But it's slightly different. We don't have some of the same avenues of visibility. So it does take us thinking a little bit differently in that context to be proper within the controls of that. We also need to look at data security, and this is becoming even more of an issue, especially as privacy concerns continue to accelerate within the world. GDPR is a perfect example of where some of us are pulling our hair. Well, I used to have hair, but I think that PCI took that. But it's data governance around encryption, around file integrity monitoring, data loss prevention, protection of intellectual property. These are things that we want to make certain that we understand our risk appetite from an organizational perspective, and that we have defined a way to manage it in both structured and unstructured data stores. Very important. The other thing that we want to look at is, and we talked about this a little bit in the DevOps aspect of security architectures around secure builds, making certain that we're starting from known good. This is especially important when we're thinking about things like containerization and having vetted and clean and known secure containers, because those things are popping up and popping down. We want to make certain that they're right out of the gate. And then the visibility, looking at what we can do from a logging perspective within the cloud or virtualized environments, looking at audit capability. A lot of that is driven by compliance still. So compliance is still a useful stick. But as I said to a colleague last week, compliance doesn't necessitate security. So making certain that we're following best practices and the mechanisms that we build for that. And that kind of goes in line with making certain that we have appropriate policy foundation around data governance and being cognizant of our geo and political requirements in that regard. And then, last but not least, we can look at things like application security. And this kind of feeds into what we were talking about with, integrating into the DevOps chain. It's making certain that we're picking tools that can be automated, that we've got expertise in-house to help interpret that, making certain the tools are doing what they're intended to do. We're tuning them. We're making certain that they're weeding out false positives. And there's a level of confidence with those tools within both the development community and us as security practitioners. And then just a couple closing thoughts. You make certain, if your organization is starting to look at digital transformation, get in those conversations early. Make certain that you're understanding where the business is trying to go. Because if we're not a partner, they will go around us. I think we've seen that with shadow IT in a lot of organizations. That IT and security couldn't get off their rear end to help them, and we really need to get in front of it. It's a lot less costly to do it up front than try to retrofit in the end. And then just to understand that the market is changing. Our clients are going digital, our channels are going digital, and our competition's going digital too. So if we're not going to do it, there's going to be someone else that will fulfill those needs of the clients, and you don't want to be left standing behind that. Make certain that you're engaging and partnering with your DevOps teams. Enable organizational learning, instill a culture of security, remove blame from the equation. It's okay to fail. That's one of the beauty of DevOps is we can fail quickly. We can experiment more, but we have to understand that it's okay. And then just finally, leverage reference architectures. Build known and working models which can be implemented based upon the level of risk that initiative or that application base brings to the organization. And then it's time for questions. Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear, sir.
I was wondering what types of tools and technology that you see and use when you're trying to integrate automated security into the development lifecycle?
Oh, sure. So from a code inspection, aspect, things like Veracode, Fortify. I've worked with organizations to implement that directly into the code stream. So as code is checked into repository, a scan is kicked off. There are some emerging technologies, and unfortunately the name escapes me right now, on iterative testing, so more around interactive testing of security functionality within the applications. As far as logging, looking at what your code repository can do from an audit perspective and making certain those controls are in place. We used Jenkins and a couple of the organizations that I work for, and Microsoft Team Project, and we implemented the auditing trails for those and made certain that that activity was sent to our system of record, basically RSM. No other questions? Do you have a question, sir? Or not? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time today. Appreciate your listening to me for the last 20 minutes. Hopefully you found something useful in here. Thank you.